Hey there, got a video here for teachers on utilizing Lightspeed. Sometimes it's referred to as classroom relay. And essentially, this is a platform. It's actually an extension of our school filtering system that gives teachers the ability to monitor what their students are doing on their Chromebooks in class, as well as having some control over what their students have access to. And it is an extremely easy to use, easy to navigate, pretty straightforward platform. And having said that, though, if you watch this and you have any questions or concerns, I'd be happy to stop by and walk you through this in person. It doesn't take long to show folks around. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward and does a pretty good job of accomplishing what it is meant to do. Um, so one of the nice things about this is there should be minimal setup for the teacher. If you navigate to, it does have a kind of an orthodox URL. It's classroom.relay.school, which you can see up here. This is one of those things I recommend to teachers to go ahead and bookmark. And if you're not familiar with how to do that, if you hit Control D, that's Control D as in dog. It will go ahead and create a bookmark for you, or you can hit the star button up here. I say that because anytime there's something that you don't maybe use all the time, and especially if it's got a weird web address, bookmarking is a good practice to use just so you've got it when you're ready and you don't have to remember it. So once you're there, you can log in with your Google login information pretty quickly and easily. And then the other nice thing is it actually pulls your classes and your rosters over from Skyward, and you can see over here. And I don't have a whole lot of classes to work with here, but this gives you an idea of where you're going to look and what it's going to look like. We have had an issue recently this year with older classes, like classes from previous years and things like that, not falling off or going away. And then that can make this with, all the various different periods. If we've got, especially teachers who have orange and black classes or with OTE at the high school, things like that, this list can get really long and overwhelming, and trying to figure out which one is current and what you need and all that kind of stuff can be difficult. So I've actually got a separate video that's like 30 seconds long that will walk you through how to hide classes. I'll make sure and if anybody needs that, I can send that out to you as well. So you really have a minimal amount of setup here. It's possible that you may have to fiddle with the schedule a little bit, because you have to blocks have to be set up, or class periods have to be set up, because you're technically only supposed to be able to view, monitor, control during your class time. For the most part, our folks in IT have went ahead and pre-configured those for us now. And you'll notice there are there's different settings you can go with as far as the schedule, because we have days where the schedule is different, and if the schedule is different, then if your class is at a different time, then you may not be able to monitor your students when they're actually in your classroom. So you can go ahead and temporarily change those to different schedules and things like that. When you click in a class, and just to make sure you understand this, like obviously I don't really have any active students right now, so it will look a little bit different, but this is close enough that you'll be able to get a good idea of what things are going to look like, and how they're going to operate when you go to a class. This is something else that I think they are kind of experimenting with different views and formats and things like that. So what actually shows up when you click into a class has changed even a couple times, like within the past year. As far as, like I said, what you're going to see right when you log in, but the main components haven't changed. The main idea of what they're doing with this hasn't really changed a whole lot. So as I log in today, the default view is your student screens. So when I log in, if they're active, they're going to have a green dot next to their name. And then I will actually be able to see their screen, and I can hover over their screen and I get different options. Okay. I would actually see a bigger picture of their screen here. I would be able to actually record their screen. I can block certain things. If I see tabs open that I want to close, I'll have a list of those right here. I'll be able to, send alerts to them or to lock their screen entirely if I feel like I need to do that. So you get a whole bunch of options by actually clicking on their screen. But this view right here allows me to kind of scan through and see all my students' screens at once if they're logged in. The next button over here is what used to be the default when you would log in, and it would show all your students' names and they would be lit up as active if they were in class. And then you would see what they're currently on, what they've been viewing the most. And if I clicked on their name, it would again bring up this side tab here where I would get a more detailed, I'd be able to see what they're on. I can see a list of the tabs that they have open and so forth. And again, if I hover over that screen, if this was there, it would give me some other options. That's able to be accessed from various different spots. I can create groups if I've got like a group of kids that I really feel like I need to be able to monitor more closely, and I've got other kids I'm not so worried about, or whatever the case may be. I can create groups of students. So it gives me the ability to do that. And then the last one is one that's been around for a while, which is they call it a heat map. And what that basically amounts to is if it's lighter, that means that a student is probably sticking to one tab and working there and so forth. But it'll get darker yellow and then orange and then maybe red or whatever. And so the darker it gets and the closer to red it gets, what that means is that the student is bouncing around to a bunch of different places. They're not just, staying on one site or one tab or whatever, which may indicate that the student's doing something they're not supposed to be doing, hopping around and copy and pasting stuff during a test or just whatever, they might be doing, hopping around to a bunch of different places. And again, I can click on a student here and it's going to bring up that same side tab. So those are some kind of individual things that I have access to. Up here at the top are things that I can do that impact the whole class. Okay. So right now, I can't do these things because I don't have any students in my class. I can't lock everybody's screen. I can't, but if I did, I would be able to lock every student's screen. Okay. And so that may come in handy for me. I used to, I'd always be like, okay, hey, I tell kids to go ahead and close their lids on their Chromebook when maybe it was the start of class and I'm going through the agenda. And I want to make sure that they're listening to me and paying attention to me and looking at what I have up on my screen and not on their own or something like that. So instead of telling them to close their lids or whatever on their Chromebook, you can just lock their screen and take away their access. You can turn off browsing. And so what that does is it just completely turns off their internet access. That might come in handy if you've got students working on a desktop type machine and you just want them working in something like Excel or whatever. But if they're working on a Chromebook, well, then that may limit what they can even do on a Chromebook, so that's just something to kind of keep in mind. So another thing you can do is you can send a link out to them. You can share your screen with them on their device. And this has some limitations to it depending on what kind of device you're on. And if you're on a Windows machine, whether you've got some things installed, but you can test that out and see how that works for you. The other thing is web rules. And this is where you can actually kind of extend the filtering system yourself. And so, like I said, this is the school's filter. But you can't like reduce the filter. So you can't give them access to things that they don't already have access to, but you can actually restrict more. So obviously this would be something that might be useful during a test or just a different, whatever different times you have in your classroom where that might be able to be utilized. So there's 3 different settings with this. One is none, which means it's the school's filter, and that's it. Um, Two is allow, and allow basically sets up a whitelist. And so what that whitelist means is that they can only visit the sites that you put on the list. So if you're given a test in Schoology, you could type in schoology.com or whatever, and then they would not be able to go anywhere else except for that site. Okay. The flip side of that is the block list. So, what that amounts to, you can imagine, is that students can go anywhere within the school's filtering system that they normally would be able to go, except for uh, the sites that you list. Okay, you've got some options for what you can do or what kids can do when they're done. You know, you can just say, "Hey, everybody's blocked until I say so," or they can actually request access after they're done. So you got some different options there as well. So um, I think that's the bulk of what's out there in terms of what you can do on Lightspeed. There's a few other things here and there that give you some more ability to customize things and stuff like that. But like I said, that's the most of it. One of the things to kind of keep in mind is that this is done through a an extension in the student's Chrome browser. This is something that's something that our IT guys push out to them, and it's already automatically in there. So if a student is not showing up for you, and like they're sitting right there in the room, and but they're not lit up, and you can't see their screen, one, it's possible they may not be logged in properly because they have to be logged in. Especially if they're on another device, like say, and I know we've kind of cut back on this sort of thing anyways, but if they had brought in a laptop and they were not properly logged into their Chrome browser, well, then it wouldn't operate. But sometimes students have, it's just like any filter that's existed since the beginning of the internet. Kids can find ways around the filter, and so therefore they can find ways around Lightspeed. Sometimes they can get into things that might be blocked because they use proxy servers and stuff like that. So if they get dedicated enough to go out and search for ways to get around the filter, the internet's endless and it's full of people that figure those things out, and so students can find. And so our IT guys can play whack-a-mole somewhat and knock some of those things out, but it's pretty much endless. So this is not a 100% catch-all, solve everything, but like I said, it's pretty straightforward for the most part. It does what it needs to do, and it's a great tool for teachers to be able to to make sure that students know that they're keeping an eye on them and they need to stay focused on what they're doing. So again, if you have any questions about this, if you'd like me to stop by and walk you through this a little bit more, if you have any issues, let me know, and I'd be happy to help out in any way I can. Have a good day.